This podcast provides general information about health and wellness. The information is not intended to be medical advice. If you have a medical condition or concern, please find a medical practitioner that you trust and get a professional medical evaluation.
Welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast with Dr. Andre. You are now listening to your number one source for clear, unfiltered conversations about your health and wellness. Join us every Tuesday for success stories, educational topics, and interviews with wellness experts from around the world. You can listen to this podcast on your computer, phone, or any other electronic device that streams podcasts, or download each episode and listen to it on the go. Let's get started with today's episode.
Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. And today is a very special day for me because I am recording this episode on the very best day of the year, which is my birthday. So happy birthday to me, and thank you to all the wonderful people from around the world who have reached out with birthday wishes. It means a lot to me, and I'm extremely grateful. I also want to say thank you to those of you who have been leaving comments in the comment boxes below the videos. We had a really exciting episode last week with Marybeth Gonzalez, which was a real blast. And I know that interview has really crossed a lot of borders in a short space of time. And I know there are many of you who are extremely grateful for the wonderful bits of information that were brought to light in that episode. Some of it was actually quite hilarious. So I encourage you, if you have not listened to episode 10, you should probably do that. I actually think you might want to pause this episode and go back and listen to that one. It was really good. An interview with Marybeth Gonzalez, who is the surviving wife of the late Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who is a legend in and of himself. I want to say thank you to those of you who have been sharing this episode and so many others with your friends and even with your enemies. It has been extremely helpful. I apparently hit a milestone recently with Spotify, who informed me that I had hit 250 streams off my podcast, and that's pretty encouraging. So I want to say thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. And today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. Actually, wasn't sure exactly what to speak about today, but then had a talk with a very wise lady by the name of Nisha, and she told me that the best one to go for is the one that you're seeing as the title of today's episode already, and it is Your Skin and You. Your skin and you. And the reason why we have to talk about your skin and you is because talking about health without talking about the skin is not entirely helpful. So here's how I'll present it to you. First of all, I want you to think of an answer to the following question. And the question is simply this: What is the largest organ in the body? What is the largest organ in the body? I'm not going to give you too much time to think about it. I'm going to ask you to simply shout your answers, because of course I can hear you. No, well, yeah, it is indeed the skin. It is indeed the skin. Because if you think about it, the skin covers pretty much every area of the body that we can see from the outside. I guess technically, if you wanted to get really technical, you could talk about the gut as being equally large, but we'll talk about that in the same episode shortly. And the reason why we have to think about the skin and its impact is because in a few episodes back, we spoke about the need to detox. The need to detox. And we spoke a little bit about what a toxin is to begin with and how the body normally handles toxins. And we spoke about the fact that one of the areas that can cause the body to absorb toxins is actually the skin. And it's also one of the organs that can help the body to get rid of toxins. And we spoke about that too, but we didn't go into much depth. So I want you to think about your daily routines. Both, I've actually been quite interested to realize that the analytics on our podcast suggest that we have an equal distribution of male and female listeners, which is delightful because it means that the examples I give need to be evenly distributed. However, having said that, I'm going to pose this question primarily to the females. I want you to think about your skincare routine. Your skincare routine in the mornings and maybe even throughout the day. And I'm going to toss out a few things that it probably includes. Number one, there's going to be something like a facial wash, I'm guessing. There's going to be something called maybe a facial toner, I'm guessing. There may be something called a facial scrub, I'm guessing. And let's not forget, for those of you who frequently wash your hair on your own, there's going to be the obligatory shampoo and conditioner. And then depending on what you bathe with, there's going to be the body soap or body wash. And when you emerge from the shower, or depending on the order that you do it in, you can see how much I know about skincare routine. I guess you do the facial stuff after emerging. Anyway, the point is, at some point before you leave the house, you would have applied a variety of chemicals to the skin. And this doesn't even include deodorant and lotion, which is actually applied to almost every area of the skin, lotion that is. And so you ask yourself, if the skin is the largest organ in the body, and if it is able to absorb chemicals from the outside inwards, then do we know how much of the many chemicals that we put on in the mornings before leaving home, how many of them are absorbed through the skin and into the bloodstream? How many do you think? And let's say, for argument's sake, the skin is extremely healthy, and let's say the body absorbs only 10 to 20% of the chemicals you apply to it in the mornings. Now, I want you to, if you can, I want you to take a moment and take up if you're near to it, take up one of your skincare items that you would normally use. Whatever we didn't speak about makeup, cosmetics, that kind of a thing. And remember, this is a judgment-free zone. We're not trying to create a problem here. We're just trying to inform, because of course we have a reputation for being the #1 podcast for clear and unfiltered information about your health and wellness. So I gave you enough time to take up your favorite skincare item, and I want you to flip to the back, and I want you to just simply read the label. And I'm guessing that depending on how diligent you are about having toxin-free skincare routines, you may not be able to pronounce half of the things that you see there. First of all, there's probably going to be at least 20 items listed as ingredients. And I'm going to guess that neither you nor I is able to pronounce maybe even 50% of those. Which means that if we're going to absorb, and this is just a theoretical problem, if we absorbed only 10 to 20% of the chemicals listed on the back of your favorite skincare item, then we're still in trouble, because half of those things are not pronounceable. Half of those things need a biochemistry degree to be able to figure out what they do. And if they are absorbed and get into the bloodstream, which they probably will, then there's no telling what the body will have to do to help to get rid of them again. And more importantly, especially for the ladies, it's important to remember that a lot of these substances will function as what we call hormone disruptors. Hormone disruptors, which means that not only will they get into the body and act like a toxin, and we spoke about what a toxin is a few episodes back, but they may actually be interfering with the signaling that your body uses to send messages around with respect to your hormones. So sometimes the very substances that are being applied to our skin are actually contributing to the hormonal problems that we face. So the intention here is obviously not to scare you, but to make you aware of the possibility that by applying all these lovely skincare products, is the word I was looking for all this time, to your body, you may, obviously you're helping with your appearance and with the health of your skin, but at the same time, it's possible that you are actually interfering with your health by introducing chemicals, which, to be clear, are not necessarily toxic chemicals per se, but when they enter the bloodstream, absorb through the skin, they may behave like toxins, meaning they may behave in a way that interferes with the body's ability to regulate itself. Yeah? So that's not what we're aiming for here. And it's a very interesting episode, and I'll tell you why. Because in addition to talking about the skin, we need to talk about the connection between the skin and probably an equally large organ. And I'll tell you what that organ is coming up right after this announcement.
In a world that moves too fast, it's easy to lose touch with what truly matters, your well-being. At Teshuva Wellness, we believe in a return to balance, to healing, to your best self. Our holistic approaches nurture not just your body, but also your soul. Whether you're seeking peace, energy, or a deeper connection, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Our medical experts specialize in holistic treatments for chronic diseases, ranging from autoimmune illnesses to cancer. Our treatments are safe, non-toxic, and effective. Because at Teshuva Wellness, your journey to wellness is our greatest commitment. Visit our website today at teshuvawellnessjae.com or call 1-876-787-8197. That's 1-876-787-8197. Teshuva Wellness. Return to health. Return to your best self.
All right, and we're back. And I wanted you to take a close think. Wow. How many times have you heard somebody say, hey, I have allergies? All right, so we're running two thoughts in parallel here. We've spoken in the first part of the episode about the skin and the potential for introducing toxins from the outside. Now I want you to think about this. How many times have you heard somebody say, I have allergies? And importantly, they usually say something like, I have eczema. And if you listen to your friend, the next thing they're going to say is, because I have eczema. Or, for example, what I noticed over the years also, mothers will say because their child has eczema, they have restricted the child's diet to remove certain foods from the diet. And you'll hear many people, mothers in particular, say, hey, I noticed that when I removed certain food items from the child's diet, the amount of eczema reduced, or the frequency of flare-ups reduced. So this is a parallel line of thought that we need to have to make our healthy reasoners better able to discern what's good for health and wellness. So if it is that reducing the types of foods or the amount of certain foods that a child or an adult consumes reduces their expression of allergies, then it simply tells us that there is a connection between the skin, which we said was the largest organ, and the gut, which is not considered to be one entire organ, but which has very interesting characteristics. Now, there are several similarities between between the skin and the gut. And the similarities begin pretty early in life because both of them represent the first barrier to protect us from offending agents. So without our skin, external organisms, toxins, chemicals, things that are bad for us could just simply go straight from the external environment into our bloodstream. But no, because the skin is there as a protective barrier, it is able to resist the ability of these, whatever they are, to just go straight into the bloodstream. And there has to be some amount of absorption, or sometimes if there's a breakdown in the barrier that the skin represents, then it presents an opportunity for whatever the harmful agent is to get through into the bloodstream. And interestingly, the same thing applies to the gut, because the gut usually provides a very tight barrier. So when a child is outside playing in the dirt, puts some of the dirt into his or her mouth, swallows it, and it gets down into the intestines, then the barrier that the intestines provide now has to assist with preventing any harmful agents in that dirt from getting across the lining of the gut and into the bloodstream. So that's two similarities between the skin and the gut. And the next similarity is both the gut and the skin have what we call normal microbial flora, meaning there's a population of germs that are found both on the skin and within the gut that are just resident there. And to a large extent, these organisms, bacteria, or whatever the case may be, are actually pretty helpful because they're there, other more harmful organisms find it difficult to get through. So apart from just a physical barrier that both the skin and the gut have, there are organisms of various kinds, which we call microbes or microbial flora, which help to populate the area, and they also help in protective ways and regulatory ways to keep the areas safe. And so you'll notice that a child often puts things to their mouth, and it's almost like they're interrogating the object with their mouth. That's a whole other discussion. But equally, children play a lot outside, and it provides an opportunity for the body to interact with the external environment in a way that is safe because the skin and the gut largely help to keep them protected. All right. The final thing about both the skin and the gut is that they both have an opportunity, they provide an opportunity for the immune system in general to interface with the external environment, because the gut has a lot of immune cells present in the gut, and these immune cells help to interrogate whatever it comes into contact with and to present information to the rest of the body about whether this is likely to be harmful or helpful. So now we have a connection that exists between two areas of the body with the largest surface area, both of them more or less behaving in the same way. I mean, obviously the gut helps with absorption of food and so on as well, but largely providing a physical barrier to offending agents entering the body. And what we now need to do is to bring the two things together. Let's bring those two thoughts together and see what we come up with. And we're going to do that right after this break.
Are you enjoying this episode? Remember, we are depending on you to help this podcast grow. Take a moment to leave us a 5-star review in your podcast app. Go ahead. We'll wait. All done? Okay, now share this episode with 5 friends. Thank you.
And we're back. So now we've kind of figured out that there is some sort of a connection between the skin and the gut. And I'm sure somebody who's listening has a friend who changed up their diet and they, I don't eat this anymore, I don't eat that anymore, and look at my skin, it's beautiful. And one of the interesting things about that is that, like we said, both the skin and the gut present a part of the body's, let's use the word immune system, because it's a way for the body to be able to interrogate what's going on with, whether external or internal agents trying to affect the body. So how do we connect the two things? Well, here's the interesting part that brings everything together. If it is that one can consume, for example, cow's milk, which whether appropriately or not is often blamed. Somebody consumes cow's milk, or a child starts to consume dairy, and the parent notices that they start to develop rashes. How does this happen? What's the connection between the two things? Because clearly we've had one thing that has taken place. How do we bring the two things together? Well, you remember we spoke about the fact that the toxins in the body are substances that can potentially be harmful in that they interfere with the body's ability to regulate itself. Well, in that scenario, the body then begins to stimulate or send signals to the various areas of the regulatory system to say, hey, we need to get rid of this toxin. Now, my personal rule of thumb is this. Generally speaking, once a patient exhibits skin rashes or skin allergies, eczema, all of these various things. Now, I want you to be very clear on what I'm saying here. I am not saying that the body is always trying to clear the toxin through the skin, which is why the patient manifests an allergy. But what I usually do as a rule of thumb is if a patient comes to me and their complaint is largely about their skin, I begin to look closely at the health of their gut. I hope as a healthy reasoner you can follow the difference between what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. So I tell myself that the reason why the body is expressing this manifestation or this reaction in the skin is because something is irritating or disturbing the good health of the gut, triggering the immune system, the aspect of the immune system that's present there in the gut, and as a result causing the skin to try to express, no pun intended, almost to expel the toxins by way of the skin. And it's not unreasonable. Now, I do not want anybody to take this as prescriptive or to come after me to try and go through the scientific background of it, because I'm not establishing a scientific principle here. What I'm telling you is how I think about these things. So for argument's sake, we could say that the reason why the skin becomes irritable and so on is because the body is trying to find a way to clear, let's say for argument's sake, dairy. And one of the ways it tries to expel it is via the skin. Now, is this always the case? Absolutely not. But what I have found is, yes, it's always helpful to look at the individual's gut health to assist with trying to figure out why the skin is behaving in the way it is. And many mothers will tell you that when they switch their children away from dairy milk, for example, the manifestation of the allergies reduces significantly. But more importantly than that, in some cases, there are patients who can't ideally point to the specific food or medication or preservative or whatever it may be that may be irritating the gut health. However, once we start to look closely at the health of the gut, we usually find that if we can get the gut healthy again in general, then usually what will happen is the skin will follow suit. There's a variety of ways that we do this to help the body to detoxify better so that the skin will not have to present in this way. Now, here are a few ideas that are generally helpful. And there's a reason why I'm talking about this, because I recently had a friend of mine approach me about this very thing. They're having a lot of itching, especially in the summer months, and not sure why, not sure what it could be. And I said, hey, we could spend a lot of time trying to do allergy testing to figure out what the likely cause is and so on. But how about we try a slightly different approach? And that slightly different approach is simply to find a way to cleanse the gut in general. And I use very specific scientific principles and techniques. I use a German technique called autonomic response testing. There are various levels to that. I use treatment techniques like neural therapy to help my patients. And when I find where the offending agent is likely to be, what I'm usually able to do is also find an appropriate remedy. Now, remedies can be specific to the offending food or preservative or chemical, or it may be non-specific, meaning if we use something like a binder is usually a natural supplement that helps to generally clean the inside of the gut. We're not talking about laxatives or anything to cause diarrhea. We're talking about simple things. For example, we talk about activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is one of those helpful binders that will usually adhere or become sticky and latch on to anything that's creating an irritation in the gut. Another one that we use sometimes is chlorella. Another one that we use is zeolite. And there are several different types of binders that can be used to assist with improving gut health. Now, again, I want to emphasize that this is not prescriptive, but I'm giving you an insight into how we treat some of these problems. So if we are able to generally restore the gut health to balance, meaning we give an appropriate binder, the toxins over time are bound and passed out into the stool, and over time the gut begins to stop sending these aggressive signals that something is wrong. Usually what will happen is the whole body becomes healthier, and we spoke about why, because detoxification is not just about looking better, but it is also about helping the cells to remove the waste from themselves and their immediate environment and getting the body generally toxin free. So if we are able to do that, then what it means is that all organs of the body become healthier, including the skin. Here's where it gets exciting now, because remember we spoke earlier in the episode about the fact that the skin is able to absorb harmful chemicals, but I'm sure we are all aware that the skin is also able to release harmful chemicals. And for those of you who like to watch Italian mafia movies, or sometimes even movies with Russian bad guys, you'll notice that these guys often eat very poorly. They often engage in very unhealthy habits like smoking, drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. Their lifestyles are often not the best anyway, and in many cases they are obese. And yet you'll notice I do a very interesting thing, which is more often than not, they will visit something called a bathhouse or a sauna or a sweat room, something like that. And they'll sit for hours talking in there and sweating. Why do they do this? It's simple. They know that the skin is one of the largest organs for both absorption and detoxification. So when the temperature goes up and the body begins to sweat, the pores open up in the skin, it's an opportunity for some of those toxins that they have taken in over the preceding months and years to be released via the skin out into the sweat and away from the body. And so it's actually not unreasonable to think that they could be assisting their health, although of course they're, and we're talking about characters here. Let me be very clear. We're not talking about a specific group of people. We're talking about the characters in the movies. They could be helping themselves, although their lifestyle and diet is otherwise so poor that you wonder how much they're helping. But it's still a reasonable strategy to help to cleanse the body. So let's get back to the original point that we made. So we spoke about the fact that putting certain chemicals onto the skin can interfere with the body's ability to regulate itself. So those chemicals may therefore behave like a toxin. We also spoke about the importance of the relationship between the gut and the skin and how the two things, the two areas of the body interact. And now we're talking about helpful ways to protect the gut and help the gut to heal, and by extension to help the skin to heal. And we're talking about how helpful it is to have the skin do a lot of sweating and opening of the pores to help to detoxify the body. So how do we pull everything together? Well, here's my general rule of thumb. When my patients come to see me, one of the, after designing an appropriate protocol for them, the programs that will help to assist them to heal whatever the chronic disease may be, in many cases cancer, in many cases autoimmune illnesses, I treat a lot of that. A lot of these things will improve when the gut health improves. But guess what? I also recognize that generally speaking, if I reduce the amount of toxins in the body, then the person is going to heal. I'm not saying they're going to be cured, but I am saying they are going to heal, and every bit counts. So one of the most common things you'll hear me say to my patients, any patient of mine will say this, at some point I've said to them, when was the last time you visited the beach? And I'll put a plug in here for our Jamaican beaches, which are excellent beaches because the sand is warm and the water is warm and the breeze is usually quite cool. I'll leave it there. I went to the Pacific coast and went to one of the beaches on that side of the world, and that's all I'll say about that. Our water is warm, our sand is warm, and the air is cool. And I think that is a trifecta, the best possible combination of temperatures. Anyway, enough said about that. I recommend that my patients visit the beach, and here's why. If you visit the beach, especially a Jamaican beach, and let's say you submerge up to about waist height, what you are doing essentially, my own theory, this is not scientific fact, is that you are submerging yourself in a solution or a bath of healthy minerals and electrolytes, various salts and water, not to mention the contribution of the seaweed and other plant life to that solution that you're standing in. Above your head, you have the sun beating down on you, which we mentioned earlier is helpful for raising the body temperature and assisting the body to start sweating and opening the pores. And you are going to open the pores into that same solution, which most likely is going to result in you releasing the toxins outwards. And it's also an opportunity for you to absorb some really healthy minerals, electrolytes, and trace elements from the seawater as well, with those pores that are now open. It's similar to when somebody takes a bath in Epsom salts and soaks for a while to help to get the magnesium levels up. I think it's infinitely even more helpful if you were to do that at the beach. And so I encourage my patients who can to visit the beach for those reasons. I could have sent them to a sauna, or I could have sent them to a steam room. But I think the beach works pretty well. And I love our Jamaican beaches. I just went to one yesterday. So let's look at how... let's consider a few things about how we can reduce the amount of toxins coming in via the skin. First of all, read your labels. For anything that you're going to put on the skin, read your labels. More and more health-conscious manufacturers are emerging. Many of them are ensuring that the substances used to make their soaps and perfumes and lotions and cosmetics are as harmless as possible within reason, or at least that the chemicals being used to make these products are not known to behave like toxins or hormone disruptors when they are absorbed into the skin. So you can start there. Consider reading your labels and doing your research. A really good website is called EWG, Environmental Working Group, I think it is. And it usually has a rating system that helps you to understand the product and if it is likely to be helpful or harmful, and whether harmful ingredients are contained therein. Go through your beauty supplies, your cosmetics, your skincare products, and start to read them carefully. If you see chemicals that are well known to be harmful, and a cursory check of Google will tell you what these chemicals are, then you may want to re-evaluate. I'll give you a funny story and then we close. I remember when I first learned autonomic response testing back in 2017. I've been doing it for 7 years now. One of the services that I used to offer to my clients was I would have them bring all their cosmetics and skincare products to the office. And one by one, we would do autonomic response testing to see whether this product was being harmful to the body or whether it was being helpful. And we'll do an episode on autonomic response testing soon enough, so you'll be able to understand where I'm going with this. But we used to do this for a while, and I remember one lady in particular brought you'll call it a hefty bag. In Jamaica, we call it a garbage bag, filled with lotions and perfumes. And this was just a quick grab that she had made just before coming to the office. And I mean, she had, when I sat down and counted, she had over 23 different products scattered across my office desk. And we went through and tested her against every single one of them to see how her body was reacting with autonomic response testing. And would you believe that of the 23 products that she used quite routinely, only 9 of them were, as a result of our ART, or autonomic response testing, were helpful to her body. which means that the other 14 which she was applying regularly were not helpful to her body and quite likely were behaving like toxins when her body was exposed to them. So what does that mean? Well, in today's society, where increasingly purchasing products becomes incredibly easy from various parts of the globe, one needs to do one's own personal quality control to ensure that what you're putting against your skin or onto your skin is actually helpful to you. And the second thing to consider is, if you do have a chronic illness, particularly one that's related to hormones or dysfunction or abnormal regulation of the hormones, one of the first things you could do is to consider whether your skincare products are actually interfering with your health. I'm not saying they're the cause, but they could very well be interfering. We may do a follow-up episode on the skin, but these are just thoughts. This is my birthday episode, so happy birthday to me again. And if you have any questions or comments, you know how to find me. Reach out to me on social media at wellnessdoc Jamaica. That's WELLNESSDOC If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, I would love if you leave a comment below. You may be listening on another platform, whether YouTube or otherwise, and there's more to come. Feel free to leave a comment wherever you're listening. We'll try to get to all of them and assist as best as possible. If you would like to do a consult with me, I know you can find ways to do that on the show notes or in the show notes. I think that information will be there. And I want to say I give you permission to enjoy the rest of the day. It's the best day of the year. And I know that you will enjoy it because it is in fact my birthday. And happy birthday to me. And enjoy the rest of the day, all of you healthy reasoners. Bless you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you can be updated as soon as new episodes are ready. If you have a question, send us a voice memo on Spotify or type your questions out in the comments. For more information or to become a sponsor, please check the show notes for our contact information. See you soon.